cold nor hot, I will begin to vomit thee out of my mouth. Because thou sayest, I am rich and made wealthy, and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked, I counsel thee to buy of me gold, fire tried, that thou mayest be made rich, and mayest be clothed in white garments, and that the shame of thy nakedness may not appear, and anoint thy eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. Such as I love, I rebuke and chastise. Be zealous, therefore, and do penance. Behold, I stand at the gate and knock. If any man shall hear my voice and open to me the door, I will come to him and will sup with him and he with me. That's a pretty well-known line as well. But then here's this. To him that shall overcome, I will give to sit with me in my throne, as I also have overcome, and am set down with my Father in his throne. And I think if we hear that clear, like that just strikes the heart as where we want to be. With Jesus in his throne, with the Father in his throne, if we overcome, as he overcame, which is a big if. Gets to the sacrificial love that Father is talking about. And the other aspect of this that really strikes me is that we can think, I think it's very easy to fall into the temptation of thinking that, we're doing pretty good, or, we got all this stuff, or, life is kind of comfortable in this way or that way. And he's saying, don't you realize how you have nothing, actually? Don't you realize, like, you think you have these clothes on, you're naked? Don't you realize, like, you think you're doing good, you're wretched? Now, he's not trying to tear us down. He loves us, right? He's trying to help us to see reality. We are in desperate need of God. Whether we understand that or not is a fact. We are in desperate need of God. It ought to be a fundamental disposition in our hearts and in our minds. We are in desperate need of God. That changes the way we think and the way that we live. Then we understand why God calls us, commands us to go to Mass every Sunday, and it's a mortal sin if we don't. He loves us so much. He knows we're in desperate need. He's telling us, you need me, right? And we're not going to stop with the minimum. We're going to hunger and thirst for far more if we really understand the desperate need that we're in. So we acknowledge our weakness. We humble ourselves before him, and he wants to fill us, and he wants to strengthen us, and he wants to build us up, and he wants to call us to be able, by his grace, to be able to pick up our crosses each day and carry them and offer them in authentic love, so that graces can be poured out. This is real, and this is what we're called to in our lives. If we see it, it's incredibly exciting. This is not some boring church stuff that so many have been led to believe and have thrown it away as if it's nothing. This is the most exciting adventure that you can possibly imagine. It is a massive love story from the top down. God creates us out of love, holds us in being by his love, and is calling us to receive his love, to humble ourselves, receive his love, and then to live out of that love. And then there's this battle that is raging, this spiritual warfare that is raging, that the enemy is coming for us and coming for all, right? He's coming for our souls. He prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour, right? This is real. Again, there's something horrible about that, but there's also something exciting, should be exciting to our masculine hearts. This is real, and we are called to a specific role in this war to really live out, fulfill the roles that we have, which are many things. I want to touch on a couple brief ones. It's basically saying similar to what Father was saying in a different way, the way that God has helped me to understand it, which is that there's the universal call to holiness, right? God is calling us to be men of faith. that we are to humble ourselves before him again. That's where it all begins. And it's because of the reality that exists, that God exists. He is everything. He is all love. He is creator. Why would we not want to humble ourselves? Why would we not think that that's the right disposition? Of course it is, right? And so we should humble ourselves in great gratitude, and then he wants to, again, fill us and build us up. So to be men of faith, to be men of humility, men of gratitude, and then from that, a life of prayer, right? To actually be living out what we're claiming to believe. It should all kind of flow naturally if we have the eyes to see it. So then we set up pillars of prayer in our lives so that we're showing up at these times. It could be the liturgy of the hours, could be daily mass as part of one of these pillars, could be the rosary. That's what really helps me, to have pillars of the rosary throughout the day. Could be various pillars of prayer throughout the day. And then with the ultimate goal that those pillars of prayer are going to overflow, and soon we can actually answer his call to be praying without ceasing, which is way too big for us. He calls us to things that are too big for us, that help us to understand we are in desperate need of God to do what he is asking of us. So that's okay. That's the actual way it works. We're in desperate need of him. Let's go to him. Let's let him fill us and build us up so that we can, by his grace, do what he's calling us to do, fulfill what he's calling us to fulfill. And this is amazing because he will actually do that in us and through us. And when you start to step out in faith on that, and you start to see him working in you and through you in ways that you haven't seen before, that you would never believe you could do things that you can do by his grace, and you know it's him, then it's like, okay, now I know, now I'm even more sure this is real, right? And this is how it works. And then to step out in faith once more. So to me, that's kind of what I've seen in small ways, but in ways that he's proven himself over and over for me. And he never should have to prove himself at all, but he does, to lead us, to build us up, to strengthen us as a loving Father. So from that life of prayer, we're called to a definitive vocation, to make that gift of self, a final gift of self in this life in some way where others are entrusted to our care. Whether that's priesthood, religious life, whether that's married life for most of us. And then in that way, we are committing ourselves to him, right? More than anything else. But then that comes with an additional responsibility of what the vows of that vocation contain. Again, it's too big for us. It's too great for us to do it well. But we're called to because we can, by his grace, again, if we humble ourselves, so on and so forth, life of prayer. And so we want to live that vocation well, right? This is then the life of the family. This overflows with life to the life of the family, to the life of the parishes, the life of the dioceses. If men are stepping into their vocations and fulfilling their vocations well, by God's grace, the glory that comes from that, the good fruits that come from that, right? So again, help us, God. And then apostolic work. So this is kind of like the third level, and these things all flow together, and that is that we are to be bringing forth the kingdom of God. More than just in our vocations, more than just in those that are entrusted to us. That's first and that's foremost. We've vowed ourselves to that. We've got to do that well by God's grace. But that's not all. We are supposed to be going out. We are supposed to be bringing his light into the darkness in the world, especially as laymen. As the church teaches that we are to sanctify the temporal order. Many of us going into places that no priests or religious go, they just don't naturally mix in the places that we might find ourselves at work or whatever, in different extended family situations or whatever it may be, and we're called to bring the light there, right? So we're in a situation where we have to face the reality that we have an ongoing daily mass murder of our littlest, most vulnerable brothers and sisters. It's just a fact. That's what's going on, right? If people understood what was going on when slavery was legal in the United States, if people understood what was going on when the Jewish people were being murdered in the Holocaust, right, and others, if people understood what was going on when these horrible things were happening, and there were times when people did start to understand what was going on, and we look back on that now and we can say, if I was alive then, what I would do. We can all kind of look back and see what the noble thing to do would be. Well, let's use that to our advantage and think about now. Think 100 years from now, looking back on this day. If I was alive then, what would I be doing? Right? In the face of this ongoing daily mass murder of thousands every single day just in the U.S. alone, hundreds of thousands every day worldwide. Every day. That's what we're talking about. The loss of human life on that massive of a scale and such a fundamental moral rupture that is going to the very most vulnerable, most innocent you can possibly imagine, the child in the womb, and trying to spread lies to say this is not either human, which would be a scientific, just complete lie. Life begins at conception, fertilization, scientific fact, not a religious belief, but a scientific fact. Or to say, these are, okay, fine, it's human. I'll give you the scientific fact there, it's human, but it's not a person. So we can do what we want. What does that mean? That's absolute nonsense. Every human being is a human person, and we should be aggressive with that truth and put the burden of proof on whoever's trying to say otherwise. You show me a human person, or you show me a human being that's not a human person. It's impossible. They can't do it. Every human being is a human person. They'll look ridiculous if they try to present a human being who's not a human person. It's ridiculous. So our Constitution protects all human persons, right? A right to life for all human persons in the U.S. Constitution. It's there. So they are protected. It's that our government is not actually affording them the rights that are already in the Constitution. It's all there. So we should know this, and Father's going to speak to it better, but I'm trying to learn from her and learn the language. We've got a constitutional crisis, right? We've got an excluded class of people, and this is a constitutional crisis. And when I really do believe, if we can get this, and if we can learn this simple understanding of how to speak this way, and put this forth, and do it aggressively and strongly, we can start to really change hearts and minds and really start to help people to wake up to what is a foundational moral truth that you don't have to be Catholic to understand. It should help you. It should be a no-brainer for anybody who's Catholic or for anybody who's Christian that we don't kill each other, we don't murder innocent human beings. But anybody with any moral sense should be able to admit that it's a scientific fact that life begins at conception, fertilization, and it's a foundational moral truth that we should not be killing innocent human beings. And every human being is a human person, and the Constitution protects all human persons. It's not complicated. But for some reason, look, we're in the spiritual battle. Our minds get clouded. I've got 1,000 things coming in. Our vocations are first and foremost, and that's hard. Our prayer life, we got to keep, that there's a lot to do. There's a lot to think about. So if the Lord can help us in our understanding to really just get down, Lord, okay, how can we understand this very simply and put it forth very simply to help change hearts and minds and aggressively then push it, then I think we can really see some things move and move quickly. One last thing I want to say about it is something I'm coming to understand more and more. I've understood this in some ways, but I think the Lord's helping me to see this, to hone this a little bit better, and that is the fact that we have to understand also that I think we all understand that kind of like the frog in the pot, right, type of analogy, that we don't realize kind of what we're soaking in, then it's turned up, and then we're being cooked and all of that. Something like that, right? We get that with the culture. We understand how that's all working. Moral relativism. There's many things that we're soaking in, but many things that we're soaking in that we're aware of what we're soaking in, that we're aware of various evils and errors, and we're aware that that's going on in the world, and being aware of it then helps us to reject it, helps us to bring forth the opposite truths and to navigate it, right? But the key is being aware of it. The key is seeing it. Well, there's something that I think we're not that aware of and we're not seeing very well, at least I wasn't until fairly recently, and that is that we need more when it comes to pro-life leadership, right? The simple understanding that I'm talking about and that I'm saying push aggressively, that's not happening in the leadership of the pro-life movement. We've got to see that. We've got to be honest about that and say, not to tear anybody down, to say, okay, maybe they're good at this aspect. Maybe they're good at doing this thing that they're doing. But there is a vacuum of leadership in the pro-life movement. And I think that that's what maybe we're here for, is that men need to step up into that vacuum. It doesn't have to be one or two leaders or anything like that. I think it needs a grassroots movement of men stepping into that vacuum and saying, just pushing forward. I don't know. I don't know how it all works and how it happens. But I know the vacuum exists. That's where I'm at, is seeing that the vacuum exists and saying, here's the important part about seeing that, is that then I understand, like, there's something missing here. This isn't being put forth in a simple way and being pushed hard. And we're not on offense when it comes to talking about this. And that's not changing hearts and minds. We're more on defense and on, outskirts of things instead of taking it and going right down the middle and saying, we have all the moral authority. Why are we not putting it forth vigorously, right? So I hope you understand that. I'm trying to make sense of it myself, but I think that if you see it, then you say, well, that changes the way I think about this. That changes the way I think about what I'm supposed to do. That changes the way I navigate this, rather than just be soaking in a certain sort of paradigm where it's like, well, I guess we're just supposed to do it this way and this way and this way. I'm not allowed to say this. I'm not allowed to maybe say murder, that this is murder going on if I'm with these people. I'm not allowed to maybe use like graphic signs of victim imagery when I'm with these people. And there's all these different weird rules of the pro-life movement. I say, to hell with it all, in a certain sense, right? In the sense of, God, what do you want us to do, right? And let us run down the middle vigorously with the foundational moral truth of what this is. And let us present it to people. Sure, in a very nice, friendly, winsome way, but aggressively so, right? We've got the moral authority here. Like, why? I just don't understand it. I think we're just in a certain blindness, or I'm wrong. One of the two. Either we're all kind of blind to this, or what I'm saying right now is completely off. But it's what I believe. It's what I believe is true, and it's how I'm seeing it. And I'll let others speak to what they think about it. But I guess tonight I just kind of want to put it out there and make us sort of deal with it. But that's how I'm seeing it. And so that's what the National Men's March to Abolish Abortion Rally for Personhood kind of comes out of that. Discussions that Father Imperato and I have live on the air, mostly on Fridays at 4 p.m. If you ever want to listen in, you're going to hear some stuff that you're not going to hear anywhere else. And you can do it. We don't have a station here in New York. It's the station of the Cross Catholic Media Network, but we do have a mobile app, a iCatholic Radio mobile app. So if you just want to download that on your phone, iCatholic Radio, just hit the listen live every Friday at 4 p.m. This is the kind of stuff we're kicking around, bringing out some great clips of things that probably you haven't heard, getting Father's response to it. And so it's good. And the Men's March comes out of that to say we got to get off the sidelines. This is our business. This is our issue. If there's a room and somebody comes in and there's women and children and men and they mean to do some harm, nobody's thinking a woman or a child is supposed to step forward, right? It's the men who are supposed to step forward. We know this. Even though the world is trying to lie and try to shame us and keep us away from being who we're called to be, we are called to be protectors and providers. The most vulnerable, the most innocent are being murdered by the thousands every day. On our watch, in our backyards, and our women are being lied to and being exploited and manipulated. And poor people are being exploited and manipulated. There's a black genocide going on. There's a racist component. There's so much that's so evil in this. Where have all the good men gone? That's the question. And it's up for each one of us to answer that for ourselves. You know, what kind of man am I going to be? So, by God's grace, we'll be authentic Catholic men at this time in human history that we find ourselves in, and take on the fight that we didn't choose, but it's here, and it's up, and it is going to, we're all going to have to answer to how we responded to it. And I know no better way to think about it than what inspired me to get involved from the very beginning in some pro-life stuff, which was just reading the gospel of Matthew chapter 25, and Jesus saying, whatever you did to the least of these, you did it to me. And that's in the judgment of nations. Then he talks about our judgment being tied to it. So I don't know how you can water that one down. If you read that, it's pretty clear. And we all fall short. So again, all back to humility, all back to God. Give us the grace. This is too big for us. But by your grace, we can be the good men that we're called to be. So help us to be aware, help us to understand, help us to see it, then help us to have the courage, the fortitude, and the ongoing humility to stick with you and allow you to do it in us and through us to be able to do what we're called to do, be men of authentic love, real Catholic men in this time that we're in. I want to ask one last thing before I wrap up, and that is just if you would please pray for this next march, this next National Men's March to abolish abortion, rally for personhood. If you would please pray between now and when that's going to happen on June 3rd. I would love if everybody would come. If you tell everybody and get everybody to come, Albany, New York, not that far, Albany, New York, and we're also tying it in with some really great formational opportunities. A men's retreat the night before on Friday, June 2nd, that will be at the Our Lady of Martyrs Shrine in Orisville, which is about 40 minutes from Albany. We've got some hotel rooms and a room block if you want to stay over that night in the Orisville area. And then after that, do the march, the personhood rally, and then everybody from there. The personhood rally includes women, children, families, everybody back to the shrine from there for another opportunity for some fellowship, some lunch, a tour of the sacred grounds, a holy hour, and then a vigil mass for people to go forth on. So it's going to be a blessed time. But again, this is all by God's grace, all for God's glory. We got to soak this thing in prayer. If you would please pray for this, for whatever God would have for this, and for whatever men are to respond, whatever people are supposed to respond to come to the rally. Please just soak it in prayer. I would ask especially that you would remember it perhaps at Mass. Remember it in your rosaries when you pray the rosary, if you would. And I am going to set up, I just happen to have 8 of these rosaries. It's a company that we work with. We kind of call them the official rosary of the Men's March because they send us rosaries from time to time, and they're good, solid rosaries. It's called Rugged Rosaries, and I'm going to set these up here, and just at any point as we wrap up tonight, if anybody wants one, feel free to just come up and grab one. I would just ask again that you would remember us as you pray it. But these are great rosaries, and these particular rosaries are called World War I battle beads, combat rosaries. It says, power up your prayers with this battle-tough rosary inspired by the original 1916 World War I combat rosaries handed out to soldiers, sailors, and flying aces during the First World War. Rosary is designed to bring you comfort, strength, peace, and hope. So anyway, these cool battle beads, these rosaries, feel free to grab one if you wish. And that's it for me, Father Stephen and Burrow.